Deltarune Chapter 2 goes deep. Not that Chapter 1 was any different, but the amount of information we have now is really making me start to question what I thought I knew. So much that I've been thinking about how the remaining chapters will play out. And this is what ultimately led me to this video. Why Ralsei will be Deltarune's greatest villain. A claim that sounds, well, quite absurd, no? Ralsei, the kindest heart to grace the Dark World, may not be all that he seems. With the introduction of Chapter 2, things are becoming interesting to say the least. But would our lovable goat mage really betray us? Yes, I strongly think that could be a possibility, but it might not fully be in the way that you think. So buckle up because I have a lot to share. I've always loved digital landscapes and the worlds in video games. Longtime fans of the channel will definitely know that. Strong artwork has the power to take you somewhere else, and that's why I love Displates. Displates are slick metal posters featuring your passions. They're super easy to mount and cling right to your wall with magnets, no tools needed. Simply clean, peel, stick, and hang. Do you like Star Wars, Marvel, Skyrim, or tons of other games and movies? Displate is officially partnered with them. They also have over 1.4 million unique artists on there. I wanted to spruce up my place with some inspiring and thought-provoking landscapes since I spent a lot of my time writing. So I grabbed a few really cool ones. Every time you buy a Displate, they plant a tree too, which I think is pretty neat. So if you want to grab some awesome art or get the perfect gift, click my link in the description below to get 26% off your first 2 Displates or 36% off 3 or more. And a huge thanks to Displate for sponsoring this video and supporting me as a content creator. So with Chapter 2's release, we found out that in total, Deltarune will have a whopping 7 whole chapters. That's quite the adventure. But with an adventure that long and the hype for each chapter increasing with each release going forward, Toby is going to have to really pull some twists to keep this train moving the way it is now. And that's a ton of pressure. If you think about it, both the king and queen were memorable characters in their own ways. But I'd argue that difficult challenges tend to overshine character traits. Why do we all rally against the Sans fight in the Undertale genocide route? Because it was hard as heck. A comedic character absolutely thrashed us. In Deltarune, we have similar situations with the secret bosses. Jevil was a pretty brutal fight, and the goofy lad gave us a run for our money. You could say that Spamton one-upped Jevil. Maybe not in difficulty depending on how you feel about the fights, but in emotional attachment. Spamton was a super memey character, and hearing his backstory really broke our hearts. So even though I thought Jevil was the more difficult of the two, Spamton still one-upped the Jevil experience from Chapter 1, and that's hard to keep doing. I can't help but think of series like Dragon Ball Z, where the only way they could ever move forward and maintain hype in the show and manga was just by scaling the power creep through the roof. Now, one-upping the previous encounters is not 100% necessary, but the pressure is what can cause this way of thinking. Now I promise that I'm saying all this for a reason, and it'll eventually come back to Ralsei. Chapter 3's villain, or secret boss, who is presumed to be Mike, already seems like they had power or influence over Spamton. I recommend checking out my Spamton deep dive video after this one if you haven't seen it yet. So the stakes are already really high going into Chapter 3, but this pattern can't be repeated forever. It loses its punch after a while. If every chapter had one main foe and one secret side fight, would the impact slowly diminish? Toby is already under a lot of pressure from Undertale. He's hinted at this over the years, and I imagine it made creating another game hard. What if it didn't meet the expectations of the first? Mentally, that has to be overbearing. I spend a lot of times overthinking things, but even with YouTube, the goal is always to do better than last time. And that's brutal. So what is the one way to truly release the emotions of those playing your game? To throw a curveball and leave them flabbergasted? Well, betrayal. There's nothing more gut-wrenching than having characters that you love betray each other. I can't help but think back to the game Bomberman 64 on Nintendo 64. Probably the one betrayal that still has me shook to this day. You can beat that entire game and not know you were helping the villain the entire time. It's insane. Most players who didn't 100% the game had no idea that the person helping you from the start was the bad guy. The person who taught you things, gave you power-ups, and even aided you in fights. And the credits rolled and they never went back to playing that game. Unknown to them, the true villain worked with them the entire game, and now they had one of the most powerful artifacts in the universe. In that timeline, the player left the story in a really bad spot, but the player had no idea, and they celebrated their victory. But if you 100% the game, that same character reveals his true motives, annihilates the endgame boss who you thought was bad, and now the true fight begins. It's so screwed up, but an awesome twist reserved for completionists. All this to say, I think Ralsei will betray us. But what does betrayal in this sense actually mean? Well, let's talk about Ralsei's weird behavior, because it starts early on, and it grows more and more strange as time goes on. Starting off, Ralsei already knows about souls. He brings it up during your first fight. Rousei also knows about button inputs, since he tells Chris to move boxes near the start of Chapter 1 with a Z command, despite Suzy having no idea what he's talking about. Obviously, in the tutorial battle, he brought these up too, but having another character react to it definitely gives some more merit to the idea that he knows things that he shouldn't. So, let's talk about that legend. The legend that only Rousei seems to know about. I think the biggest red flag with this legend is that only Rousei can explain it to you, and that they purposely withheld further information regarding the legend until the final confrontation from Queen. Not even Queen knew about the roaring, which sounds like the strange cousin to Attack on Titan's The Rumbling. Rousei withheld this information from us until the final moment before something seemingly bad happened, and we don't even know what else he is hiding. Something else that is pretty suspicious is that Rousei knows about the school and where the pieces and parts of Chapter 1's area are at. His directions are really specific at the start of Chapter 2. Quote, "Chris, I have something to ask you. I need you to return to the light world and go to the old classroom, to the east of the closet doors. Inside, gather everything on the ground and bring it back here. Could you?" End quote. For someone who spent all their time in the Dark World, how does he know exactly where everything is at? More so, he is telling Chris as if Chris needs these directions to find the room again. It's pretty suspicious. But it only gets worse. We enter the Dark Fountain and the library and come face to face with Queen. And despite landing in an area floating in the void and surrounded with cliffs on all sides, Rousei meets up with us from the way we came. There's only one way to get to the area. It dead ends and there are no paths leading to it, except from the light world. So somehow, in theory, Rousei entered the light world, went to the library, and came into the new Dark Fountain. Again, how he knew where to go in the town is questionable, as is his ability to leave. Other Darkners turn to stone if they spend too much time in the wrong Dark World, like for example, Lancer. But Rousei seems immune. Why is that, by chance? Just who exactly is Rousei, or what? Given that he just sort of wanders over and plays it off cool, what exactly is the deal with him waiting for Lightners at the start of the game? If Rousei was just waiting for Lightners to show up in Chapter 1, did he have memories before that? Or is it similar to Chapter 2, where once another Dark Fountain was opened, it seemed like that place had always existed, and it was added back to the timeline, despite it seemingly not existing before? It's hard to tell if Rousei's memory is immediately updated, as reality instantaneously snaps into place. Near the end of Chapter 2, in the secret encounter with Spamton Neo, there's a cutscene in the hallway that happens right after the fight. Chris is overwhelmed and shouting in the basement. Suzy is freaked out herself, but Rousei assures them that everything is fine. Rousei is straight up gaslighting the situation, saying that everything that happened didn't mean anything, and that it was just a corrupted program. Mind you, he's doing this while glancing to the side in this photo. This is weird. So weird. It's not fine. Your two partners are freaking out for good reason. Rousei then tells Chris not to think about what happened too hard, and to just think of something else. After Suzy leaves, he tells us everything will be okay, and then just sort of walks through the wall behind us. Like, what? All this happens if you choose that you're not okay. But if you choose yes, that you're okay, your character strains to say they are fine. This freaks Suzy out because she knows it isn't true. But Rousei is all, well, they said they're okay, so let's roll out. He always is radiating kindness, but it feels like the anime character smiles all the time with questionable intent. The character who is 2 steps ahead always. I mean, Rousei knew everything about our characters the moment we stepped in the Dark World. How did he know our names before telling him? It's odd. And all this leaves me with a sense that Rousei knows everything about Deltarune. He knows who you are, what you must do, and how all of it fits together. And he plays the role of a kind mediator who cheers you up when you're down and fills you in when you need help. But all of it is according to his plan. And sure, Rousei could be the light to Chris's darkness. Chris is out here popping fountains while Rousei is trying to plug them up. The prophecy at the beginning of the game is all about the 2 sides of the universe, but for some reason, only the Prince of the Dark knows everything about it. He even drops that blasted phrase, space and time, something we've heard often. But what is Rousei's goal really? These Dark Worlds opening up don't necessarily seem like a bad thing, since they breathe life into an area. We don't know if the prophecy is even true, especially with how weird Rousei has been lately. The king is a murderous jerk and a horrible father, but his dialogue in his fight might very well be true. The Knight is creating new worlds for Darkners, and is that truly a bad thing? Rousei seems to think so, but in the end, it seems more like worlds are being opened, conquered, and then the residents have a choice to either come back to Rousei's town or perish as their world closes off. Doesn't sound like much of a choice to me. Of course, there's a chance that Rousei is truly doing this for the greater good. And maybe they are. Maybe everything I brought up is only what we assume based off his actions. But even with all that said, and even if Rousei is good, I still think he'll betray us. Here's why. In Deltarune, it's really important to understand the dynamic of what isn't said. Subtle things seem to go a mile, and the story we've experienced so far has been with a team of 5 people, not 4. Chris, Suzy, Rousei, Noelle, and the player. The player being this unseen force that is literally us, but in the game world it is a force that can make anyone do anything. In the Snowgrave route, it's the player, not Chris, who makes Noelle do terrible things. A voice she hears in her head even when Chris is eliminated. And when we're pushed to our final moment with Spamton Neo and Chris begs for their friends to come, no one shows up. And it says Chris is making these asks until we ask for Noelle. And then it's us, you. And Noelle cannot resist the command, the overarching power of the player's authority. And so, she kills Spamton in cold blood. Literally. So why do I bring this up? Well, it's because Rousei knows. He's aware of this entity that's controlling Chris, and perhaps that explains his weird actions. He does not ever dare tell the player things that they shouldn't know, and he thinks he sometimes is avoiding the player when having private conversations, much like Noelle does after the hospital, when she starts talking about the voice that has been commanding her, and then Chris shows up out of the dark to answer. If Chris equipped her watch in the dark world, she then freaks out because she realizes what happened wasn't a dream, and I don't blame her because that realization would be quite terrifying. So even if Rousei's intentions with Castletown are pure and not selfish or malevolent, at some point he will have to cross us. Mind you, I'm referring to the player, who uses Chris like a puppet. Rousei has been extremely helpful during our entire journey so far, but a betrayal is coming, and it's going to have an impact greater than any secret boss would. Whether it be withholding the truth to something extremely serious until it's too late to make a difference, or to confront the player to stop them from manipulating Chris into altering the timeline and what is supposed to happen. And by our choices, perhaps the dark path we took, that makes Rousei the enemy. As the king puts it, the bad guy. Much like how the king was fighting for their own justice and sense of righteousness, either Rousei is going down, or the player is. It's all about perspective of who the perceived villain is. And the battle of light versus dark is going to be one of the most powerful encounters in Deltarune. But then again, maybe Rousei is the true enemy. They claim they are the Prince of Darkness, but they have no subjects, other than the ones they manipulate into coming to their town through kindness. What if there's an unknown, bad reason Rousei is gathering them all there? Rousei also gave themselves the title Prince of Darkness, whereas Lancer is truly a Prince of the Dark. Is Rousei just the Dark World rendition of the headband with red horns that Chris used to wear as a kid? Or is he something way more powerful than he lets on? How about Asriel's tie-in? Well, that's for us to find out. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but I'd love to hear your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and cheers!